destruction is at the doorstep of the organization. You know, this is kind of funny because, well, it's really not funny, it's life-threatening. But what's strange about it is that I'm not the first to tell the elders this. It had been going on for many years. All the warnings being sent to the organization, sent to the congregations, like prophets, messengers. Jehovah God was sending us all to the elders, to the kings of the earth, the elders, as noted in Revelation. You are the kings of the earth, the elders. And we were expelled because of what we were telling you. It's as Jesus said in John chapter 16, verse 1 and 2 and 3. Know that their end is coming when they begin to expel you from the synagogue. And by expelling you, they will think that they're doing a sacred thing. The only ones who expelled back then were the ones that were not on the right side. The only word expelling that ever occurred was when a demon was expelled from a human being. The only ones called apostates was the entire nation. Jehovah always referred to his nation as an apostate nation. It was the whole nation that did this. So, there was something else I told that elder. That the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society had relations with the United Nations. With the United Nations. Had relations. Did you know about this? He didn't know about this. He was in the dark about it. However, there are some elders that do know. I'll get back to them later. So, how serious was that? Well, we know what ancient Jerusalem did. They took sides. They made alliances. Only the organization, Jehovah's Nation, those responsible at the very top, the hierarchy, the governing body, they made alliances with an organization whose purpose is to gather all the nations, all governments, under one umbrella. It's an instrument. It's Satan's tool. It's the United Nations, which is in competition with Jehovah God's kingdom. Do you think Jehovah God wants anything to do with, wants his people to have anything to do with the United Nations? Oh, but they're not the wild beast. Oh, we're going to get to that in a minute. They're not the wild beast. There's something. And they definitely are the wild beast because of all the atrocities and the mountains of bodies and the blood that they have spilled across the globe. They are guilty. World War I was created and made to bring about the League of Nations. World War II was created and made to bring about the United Nations, to improve it. One more after another. But the reason that I bring up ancient Jerusalem and their alliances that they made with other kings of other nations, and why Jehovah God seen that as something that was disgusting. This is how disgusting Jehovah God seen it. We go to Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 18. Now, before Jehovah God speaks of Aholah and Oholiba, he speaks about Jerusalem, about how he saw her in her own blood when she was born, how he took her in, how he clothed her, how he beautified her, how he married her and took her in as his own wife and took care of her and clothed her. But then she strayed away and went with other kings and committed spiritual adultery. It's even worse now, because Jehovah's nation, its hierarchy, has committed spiritual adultery with the United Nations. Therefore, United Nations, all the governments, not just Babylon, not just Egypt, all governments. It's made pals with them. Hey buddy, what do you want me to do for you? This is how serious Jehovah God sees that. Ezekiel 23:18 says, "And she went on uncovering her acts of prostitution and uncovering her nakedness, so that my soul turned away disgusted from company with her, just as my soul had turned away disgusted from company with her sister, O Jerusalem. And she kept multiplying her acts of prostitution to the point of calling to mind the days of her youth, when she prostituted herself in the land of Egypt. And she kept lusting in the style of concubines belonging to those whose fleshy members is as the fleshy member of male asses, and whose genital organ is as the genital organ of male horses. And you continued calling attention to the loose conduct of your youth by the pressing of your bosom from Egypt," in this case, the United Nations, "onward for the sake of the breasts of your youth." This is what Jehovah God is doing. Well, I won't get to that for you. I won't get to that yet. I will not get to that yet. Let's see the facts, the evidence that the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Bible and the Tract Society, did commit spiritual adultery, and they gave an oath to the United Nations Charter as members. That's a little ritual they have to do. Now, all of these members of the United Nations, all of their representatives and their dignitaries and their ambassadors, do you know who they worship and who they serve? Well, a great majority of them worship and serve the owl out at Bohemian Grove in California. It's there on live video. You can see it. Many of your politicians and many of your dignitaries and your entertainers, and they're all over there bowing down to the owl. Others serve Molech. Others serve Baal. They all really serve the devil, Satan the devil. Is this a big mystery? Is this something new? No. The Egyptians did it. The Babylonians did it. All the kings of the past did it. So when Jehovah God says that you sacrificed to idols, when Jehovah God's messengers come out to you, to the elders, to you elder kings, and tell you what Jehovah God says on the matter, and you expel them, how dare they defy the governing body, our faithful slave? What are you doing? You're sacrificing the sons of the living God to the devil. And you're sending them out to the world where they are attacked by the devil. They're all sent out, all those that belong to the heavens. You've, in a sense, executed them. And it's worse than death. It's worse than death because somebody dead doesn't know anything. But when you expel somebody and you shun them, you amputate their spirit. And there's nothing worse than an amputated spirit, because they feel cursed. They go back to their old ways for a little while, though. They go back to their old ways. Jehovah God holds you responsible for expelling them, for their blood. The proof. First off, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society became NGO members. NGO members of the United Nations, to the United Nations. What is an NGO? First, let's start off by saying what is an NGO. It says here in the book, Act of Creation, the Founding of the United Nations, written by Stephen C. Schlesinger, under the chapter Americanizing the Conference. On page 124, paragraph 3, it says, consultants were also successful in pushing for one other amendment, namely, a new article, number 71, which would permit the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations to make suitable arrangements for consultations with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, which are concerned with matters within its competence. This article had its champions in the so-called ABLE group, representing U.S. agriculture, business, labor, and education. On May 15th, the ABLE participants sent the request to Sintinus, urging a role for NGOs at the United Nations. Sintinus, or Stitinus, quickly embraced the idea, hailing the development as an unprecedented example of cooperation and unanimity between the delegates, UN members, and these independent groups, NGOs. This provision marked a major departure from the stuffy old formalities of the League of Nations that had failed to provide a hearing to outside affiliates. Article 71 led to the ongoing collaborative relationship between the UN and NGOs that endures to this day. That's an NGO. This is also the responsibilities of an NGO. The principal purpose of association of non-governmental organizations, or NGO, with the United Nations Department of Public Information is the redissemination of information in order to increase public understanding of the principles, activities, and achievements of the United Nations and its agencies. And we know who the United Nations belongs to. The devil. Devil's in the details of all the acts that the United Nations has done, and all of its members who serve Baal, Molech, and the owl. Now, in 2001 of October, or should I say September, maybe August, I think August, this newsletter, October 8th, The Guardian, a British newspaper known as The Guardian, had a title saying, Jehovah's Witnesses linked to UN queried. Sect accused of hypocrisy over association with organization it has demonized. Here's the whole article. When they became UN members, NGO members. Now, it's all there. So what happened? How did this happen? How did the organization, for so many years of faithfulness, suddenly go commit spiritual adultery with the United Nations, all the governments?